In this demo, basically, I showed you how we can construct a proportional cube in one-point perspective by kind of like guessing how it should look like. And specifically guessing the foreshortening. But there is actually a method how we can be a little bit in control in how we have to construct this one. So let's go and open a new document. In step 1, we are creating ourselves a horizon line, kind of like at the center of our page. And then we do the same for vertical, top down. And then we take a circle tool and create a nice circle around the center point. So the circle actually is the so-called cone of vision. And this cone of vision is very important because we want to keep everything we draw inside it and do not try to draw in the outside. Everything we're going to draw in the outside area will look very distorted in 1 point. And the same is also true for 2 point and 3 point. But what we have here right now is our center vanishing point. We have our right vanishing point and we have our left vanishing point. And this actually will be very handy for creating reference points so we can construct the foreshortening correctly. So after having this put down, now we can decide where actually I would like to put my first front edge down. So you see it's pretty much the same way as in the previous demo. And then I connect this obviously to only the center vanishing point. And now to find, and this is really the nice thing about this method, to find the back edge, so to estimate the foreshortening, I can either go from this edge to there or this edge to there. Doesn't really matter. Both will result into the same. And you see they start cutting these rays that actually go to the vanishing point. And if I put a line down there, there you see, there's my back edge. And actually all these 2 points are at the same level. Now let's put a line down here. So from top down and down, and then maybe here I do it this way, horizontally. There it is. Just to check that this is really true, the dashed line should run through this point. It does, so that's good. Maybe let's make a line really flat down there. So this will be a really squeezed rectangle there. Okay, let's ink what we have so far, so the shapes will be easier to read. And you see this is actually a fairly simple and not very labor intensive process, but obviously this only works when you have a compass or circle template and a hard edge ruler. Since we do everything freehand, we can maybe still use this slightly zoomed, but the idea is that you at one point you can use these methods, the same like with cutting out a square out of paper and rotating in front of your eyes. You have to memorize how stuff has to look, because while this is very accurate, it's also very labor and thus time intensive. And you don't really always want to go through this process before you put down a square. At one point you just want to be secure in knowing how the square in perspective from a certain viewpoint simply has to look. Okay. So I mentioned before, everything outside the cone of vision is going to look really interesting. So maybe let's put this one down here. Okay, so from this edge to the vanishing point, and the same. And then maybe there to this edge. And here I have my back edge. And there you can already see that this actually looks very, very distorted. So that's the reason why, for example, everything should never go over or be outside the cone of vision. Let me put one more down here, and you will see it will be pretty much the same result. There, 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 there. So inside the cone, it still looks a little bit okay, but particularly outside, it's complete garbage. We can't use this. Okay, and that's pretty much one way how you can construct the this proportional square in one-point perspective through a measured way, and make sure that your foreshortening is correct. Let's see how we can simplify this workflow here, which heavily relies on circles and lines, into a workflow that's more applicable to hand sketching, specifically considering the fact that a ruler or much more a circle tool we don't really have. Okay, so let's go to new. So on a new sheet of paper, we just make a horizontal line high up, and at the midpoint of this line, that should also be the midpoint of my page, I put a vertical line. Here I have my center vanishing point. This is actually my horizontal line. Now on this vertical line, somewhere I decide a point. I'm going to create a new layer, and from this point add a 45-degree angle into each direction. I'm going to draw a line. So I'm going to pull up my line tool. So I simply try to show you what actually the meaning of all this is. So 45 degrees here as well. There. Okay. So you see now actually where this cuts my horizontal line. So here I have my right and my left vanishing points. If you think about the previous demonstration with the cone of vision, check this one out. If I draw a circle, you see the cone of vision runs right through these 3 points. So left down here and right vanishing point on my horizontal line. Okay, so I mentioned how do we do this now by hand without having those drawing tools? Well, we have actually our hand and we have fingers, and we can measure distances quite easily. So you can put, for example, your index finger at the center point and maybe your thumb to there, and you can spread your fingers, and then more or less you rotate up and then try to find the distance. So I'm doing this now by hand on my display. Obviously you can't see the screen recording, but using my hands, that should be roughly the correct distance. Let's make an overlay. Close. The first one is a little bit off, and the second one is a little bit off. So there and there. And I mentioned before, you know, in hand sketching, when you do it by hand, you don't use a straight edge, things will look a little bit off. And as long as that inaccuracy is not too obvious, it's okay. You won't necessarily really see it, so that's good. So don't be too concerned when these points are not 100% there. Obviously, if one point is here, the other one is here, then something will really look wrong. So knowing that cone of vision basically runs this way, we can kind of like visualize where we only can draw in. So in this area, and this area we should not draw in. So with only those 3 reference points, we already have everything we need. So let's say down here I make a line, and then I ghost up my lines to there. From here I ghost to there, and then actually put my line down there. And you see now there is my square constructed proportional correct, and minimizing the possibility of strong distortions by keeping it inside the cone of vision. At this point you might think, nah, this is all nice and interesting, class, but hey, you're still using this nice line tool all the time. Fair enough. Let me show you how we can take certain shortcuts actually to make sure that our freehand sketched lines are nice and straight and also have the correct angle. Now, because I'm using Sketchbook Pro, I'm going to use the pencil for thin lines, felt tip for crisp lines, and then the ballpoint pen for really thick lines. And this also will actually show you the process, how I might actually even work on different sheets of paper. In the software, I simply would use different layers. So I would start actually with my pencil, which means again, with my ball point pen, I slightly slide over the page and just put down some really light lines. So I'm ghosting somewhere, I'm putting down maybe a line. No, arced. Yeah, the next one was good. Okay. If I want, I can put some dots maybe down, just as some visual markers. That basically defines the left and right. Okay. Now from here to the vanishing point, the center one, I have to draw a line. And this actually already shows one problem. If I want to draw a square, essentially all I need is just this line, this one. So there's actually no real reason for drawing this complete straight line or this complete line. So what I can do is basically I sketch and I try to memorize kind of like the angle. Again, you know, it's all about muscle memory. And then put something down. If it doesn't work, there, perfect. Second line was really good. I have to do the same now on the other side. But for example, I only put the line down a little bit shorter. Okay. So in the next case, the problem gets even more noticeable. Likelihood is really high that you draw a line this way, so totally too far away. Or you draw a line this way and then you notice, oh, wrong direction, and you correct it, and that's kind of rubbish as well. But from this line, I have to draw to there. All I need is actually where this line cuts this line. So why should I have to draw all this? I don't need it. It even actually makes my drawing too complicated. So here are two tricks. I can ghost over it and then actually try to memorize where maybe does it actually cut my line. So maybe there. So let's mark this for a moment. Let's pull up a ruler and see how far this might be. Okay. Yeah, and this is actually pretty close. So you see, I didn't really draw a line, I just ghosted, and where actually it would cut that line, I put a line down. So that's one tip you can do. Also, if you have a really long line to a vanishing point, ghosting always to there is really exhausting. So maybe at one point, simply put a point in between that obviously is on that ray. So now all I have to do is I only need to ghost between these 2 points, shorter distance than, for example, this line. This actually will guarantee that this line will be much better than this line. Well, actually, that line is pretty good. Whoops. Okay, but I hope that actually this helps, because this still is going into the direction of the right vanishing point. So you see, there are actually a lot of shortcuts you can take. The art in perspective product sketching is not in putting all lines down. Just make a good underlay construction. Only use lines that really are essential, because otherwise your stuff is getting so dense you might get confused at one point. Now, having this done, actually, now I can sketch maybe my horizontal line in there, there, there. Okay. Oh, doesn't want to work. There. Okay, good. So, either on the same sheet, I could use now maybe a felt pen or a ballpoint now, press more down, or maybe I could say, well, no, this looks good. I take another sheet of paper, and actually on that sheet of paper now, maybe I'm using somewhere a straight edge and put down some good line qualities, hard pressure, so the lines are nice and thick and crisp. Now for the final touch-up of a sketch, that's totally valid then to use a straight edge, so a ruler or French curve or ellipse templates. Ellipses are really, really difficult to sketch by hand. Still very good, and you should be able to sketch them somewhat accurately by hand in perspective drawing. But then for the final presentation drawing, I would use then an ellipse template and go over it and correct it. So you see basically the tricks I used. I make a slight underlay, light pressure, so you don't really see these lines. I only draw lines I really need as far as I need them, and I can even bring on raise vanishing points closer, so I don't have to go through really long distances. And that's actually all to it, how you can take shortcuts, and that really, really helps. Currently, this is a rather small display, but for example, when you draw on, let's say, like a tabloid paper format, bringing a vanishing point in really, really helps, making sure that your lines are really good. And then once your underlay is good, you see the underlay can have a lot of incorrect lines. That's not a big problem. Then with more pressure, we can go ahead and then, for example, ink those parts a little bit better. And then you have a really good, correct drawing. And that's basically it to it.